$1 million. Free to play. You just need to survive. It's the Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Pick one team to win each week. Get it right, move on. Get it wrong, you're out. The last fan standing take home a guaranteed $1 million cash prize. And for every player who joins, we add $1 to the pot, up to $10 million. The Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Play free on the Fanatics app. App access open to all. Must be 21 plus and joined by 9/8 to play. No purchase necessary. U.S. only. Void where prohibited. Subject to complete terms. See fanatics.com/game rules.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We come on the air, ladies and gentlemen, at 5 minutes after the hour with another exciting edition of the Dr. Sky Experience, as you tell us, and we do appreciate you. Welcoming you into your late evening or early morning as we move into deep parts of the weekend. The Dr. Sky Experience talks with you about the great realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, and celebrity guests and great stories of American exceptionalism. And we appreciate everybody out there. To get in contact with this particular show as we get back to our basic roots, the subject matters of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, as we mentioned, for our next 2 hours, we will be discussing the great subject of aviation with those in the know, how do airplanes fly, and great stories about what's happening in the space area as we talk about aircraft that will exceed Mach 6 and great speeds in the future. To get in on the conversation, we love, of those 4 types of conversation, we love dialogue. The others are debate, discourse, and diatribe. But to be part of our radio show in that concept of dialogue, the contact number, 1-800-848-9222. And if you'd like to email me, that's where we get a lot of our future guests from. Your suggestions, ladies and gentlemen, are most important. The email for me is just DRSKY, Dr. Sky at WABCRadio.com. And feel free to go into the Dr. Sky archives, as you, of course, can check that out here on WABCRadio.com and, of course, Red Apple Audio Networks also. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, as they navigate this powerful radio signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC, as we say, not only around the nation, around the world, but I'm sure way out into the cosmos. Again, ladies and gentlemen, a discussion in the deep realms of the stories of aviation, from the beginning of flight to aircraft that'll fly Mach 6 and future iterations of such. A great aviator once said, and I quote, "Let's get one thing straight. There's a big difference between a pilot and an aviator. One is a technician, and the other is an artist in love with flight." End quote. And to begin our conversation, no stranger to this radio show, we'll be welcoming back Bill Yenny, an author, historian, and book producer. His background goes like this. Bill Yenny is author of more than 36 nonfiction books, as well as 12 novels. His work has been selected for Chief of Staff of the Air Force Reading List, and he is the recipient of the Air Force Association's Gil Rob Wilson Award for the most outstanding contribution in the field of arts and letters, and as an author whose works have shaped how thousands of Americans understand and appreciate air power. Previous Gil Rob Wilson awardees include Edward R. Murrow, Ted Koppel, Tom Brokaw, and Tom Clancy. Aviation historian Colonel Walter Boyne, formerly director of the National Air and Space Museum, complimented Bill Yenny's, quote, masterful storytelling, while Roger McGrath of the Wall Street Journal notes that Mr. Yenny writes, and I quote, with cinematic vividness. And with that, a proud welcome again. Good evening to you, Mr. Yenny, on the West Coast, and thank you for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience. How are you?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Doing fine tonight.
Well, thank you for being with us.
Happy to be here, and yes, I'm ready to talk about aviation.
Well, you know, this runs through your blood and so many other people out there. That the history of aviation, of course, we could go back into the early days of Wilbur and Orville Wright, bicycle repairmen that do something almost unheard of, where they get a short flight, not even the length of a wingspan of a 747, but that happened a long time ago, back in 1903, if I'm correct. Is that an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement.
That's very
and
interesting.
they did 4 flights that day. It wasn't just one of a kind fluke. It was they did it, and then they did it again and again and again.
Well, Bill, this is amazing. I wanted you to say this better in your words than mine. You're the author of so many books, but not just in the aviation per se world. I mean, you're also deep into history. Give us a little bit of a, spread spectrum of some of the titles that you've written about, because I find this fascinating, not only for us here on the Dr. Sky Experience, but for future interviews. You also delve back into the history, military history. Can you give us some examples of those?
Well, I've done a lot of books on the Second World War. I've done a lot of books on air aces of the Second World War, but going way back before that, I did a biography of the Lakota Chief Sitting Bull that was on Amazon's Best Books of the Year. It was number 14 in the top 100 the year it came out, so that felt good. Sold some books with that number.
Interesting.
But that's some of what I've done.
Well, tell us anything new that's in the mind of Bill Yenny that's going to come out without revealing secrets. I'm sure there's another exciting book.
Yeah, secrets. Yes, we never reveal secrets, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you a recent one that you ought to take a look at is. During World War II, the 8th Air Force lost a lot of men shot down, and almost all of them either died or were captured. But there was a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of these men who were shot down over Europe during the Second World War, and they were neither captured nor killed. They managed to get away. They managed to go through incredible, scary times, riding trains across Europe and hitchhiking across the Pyrenees, and they made it back to England. And they were there's several dozen of them are described in a book that I wrote called The Ones Who Got Away.
Totally amazing.
So check out The Ones Who Got Away. These are guys who never got captured and managed to get home.
Bill, just as a moment of remembrance to pilots and people who served in World War II, but particularly the Army Air Corps, we see so many videos today of fleets of B-17 bombers and other types of aircraft, B-25s, doing their missions, and they're heading, around them is the flak, and so many of these individuals were shot down. Can you give us a look-see? I mean, many people may not know this. The average age of some of those people, including the pilots on some of these B-17s and other, American military aircraft of World War II, what was the approximate age of some of these people? They're very young, if I'm correct in that.
Well, if you were 25, you were elderly.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean, you see the videos, and it's so incredible. I mean, Hollywood, I can't even imagine. I've flown in the B-17. We spent a lot of time with the Collings Foundation, and we had a chance as media to fly in these different airplanes. And I'm looking and banging on the side of it, and I see how thin, because obviously aircraft can't be made of lead. But it's just amazing. But the scariest thing, if you described this, I mean, my words not compare to what you could describe it. But on the bottom of the B-17, we see this little ball turret. And the gentleman who was on the flight, he opens it up and says, "You want to get in there?" And I said, "No," but I used the HELL word in front of it. And that's incredible, because that person had to stay in there, for the duration of the flight in that tiny little claustrophobic ball?
Well, for most of the mission, he had to be in there. And this is a thing that when you look at it from the outside, it doesn't look a whole lot bigger than a basketball. And imagine a guy who had to crawl into that and share the space with 250 caliber machine guns for hours, and it's a little glass bubble, and there's nothing between you and the ground but a piece of plexiglass about as thin as the average piece of plastic packaging that you get from the store.
No, it's just incredible, Bill. That whole generation, a very special generation, and our salute here, not only on this show, but, of course, other programs around the world as we come off of D-Day and, of course, of other great things that American military air power, which we'll be talking about a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us and tuning into the Dr. Sky Experience, a rare opportunity to speak with a gentleman who knows a lot about this subject. What subject? The aviation world. Author, historian, and book producer Bill Yennie. The phone lines are open, 1-800-848-9222. We'll get more into the details of the whole hour here, but thank you really so much, Bill. I mean, I've gotten many of your books here, and we had an interview, I know, many, many years ago, if you even remember that, when we were talking about certain specifics about different aircraft. But with your permission, sir, let's go down not just memory lane, but let's go down to the interesting things, and I know you'd share with us some strange stories, too. Many, many years ago, my brother, myself, and a few other people decided one evening in Las Vegas that we heard so much about this area called Area 51, and we said, you know, we're going to take the rental car and we're going to drive up there. And this was about 9 o'clock at night, Bill, and the rest is history. But the reason I wanted you to talk about this is so many things, misinformation has been given out there. I mean, it's a big cash cow for so many people to drive up the extraterrestrial highway. But tell us some of your experiences. You and I were talking off air about this, but it's the most ridiculously dark place, which is good for night sky, but no wonder the government put it there. Tell us some of your stories. That's amazing about that place.
Well, yeah, it's really in the middle of nowhere. It takes hours to drive there from anywhere, never mind Las Vegas, and it was set aside in the early 50s when the CIA wanted to build a super high altitude, long range reconnaissance airplane, spy plane, they wanted to build this spy plane. They went to Kelly Johnson at the Skunk Works at Lockheed and Burbank, and they said, Kelly, build us an airplane, and he did, and of course it was completely top secret. Nobody knew about it. Well, they had to find a place to test this thing, and so they looked all over the West, and they found the place that was farther from anywhere than any other place, and it was a dry lake called Groom Lake, and nice and flat. They were able to put in a runway. And they trucked all of these secret airplanes. They were called U-2, and they took the U-2s up there, and they tested them, and the whole flight test program took place there. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody saw it. Nobody knew anything about it. And that's where the whole thing got started, with the U-2, and then there's a whole list of other airplanes. We could spend 2 hours talking about all of them. The A-12, which became the it led to the SR-71, fastest air-breathing airplane ever, and that was flying in the 60s, and that was another one of the aircraft out there. And then through the years, there have been a lot of others, and there are things that are just you can't even get your head around some of the things that I've heard talked about there. And,
it's amazing, Bill, and it's so amazing because as we fast forward to this, my experiences, I'm going to try to get more as we talk with you during the hour. You know, folks, the phone lines are open at 1-800-848-9222. You may have some questions about general aviation. You may have questions about, of course, some of the details that we're going to get into here, and we welcome that in the form of dialogue. But it's amazing. We used to go up to a place called the Little Alien, which many people would thought was totally a joke. It was a place that had a bar, and I guess you could camp overnight or even get a room. And we knew the owners of that place. So maybe somebody out there, Bill, is listening all across the nation and maybe even around the world that had these experiences. But I don't want to go through my experiences because that would take up the entire show. But here's the question to you. What do you really think is going on currently at Area 51? And is it really as secret a place as it might have been then? Or is it even more of a top-secret location? Your opinion, please.
Well, I would say all of the above, and that's a oxymoron. But that's the nature of Area 51. I think there are some amazing things going on out there. Like there was like the Tacit Blue aircraft back at the end of the last century. It was an airplane that this was after people started figuring out about Area 51, and this airplane went through its entire flight test program, flying all over southern Nevada, and went through the entire flight test program years. Landed, taxied into the hangar, and hangar doors closed, and none of these websites or magazines or tabloid newspapers had any idea that it had ever existed. And
yes, amazing.
So it's like that Rat 55 that has been in the newspapers lately.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, Bill. And, since we open people's minds, at least that's what they tell us, and that's our goal here on the Dr. Sky Experience, to talk about things that maybe are the great mysteries, not only here in the, astronomical and cosmological universe, but as we talk about this. But for years, and we'll leave out the story of Robert Lazar, because that could be very bizarre, not to say, we had him on our program. What's his claim to fame?
Yeah.
That alien technology has been, re-engineered, or they, took these things apart. Who knows? But let's go to the present.
Yeah.
Many people who fly in the flying world, they're interested in something that they're seeing, a strange aircraft flying around with the call sign of Rat 55. What the heck is it, and why should we be concerned at all or important at all about that?
Well, I hate to break it to you, but this airplane is 50 years old. It's a 737-200 airframe, and it's one of 19 aircraft that were ordered by the U.S. Air Force in 1973 as navigation trainers under the designation T-43A, T for trainer.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And it's one of those aircraft. It's called an NT-43A now, and it has got an enormously strange radome sticking out of its tail, and an even stranger one on its face. And there were similar aircraft, EC-135E, EC-135N back in the 70s, and they called it a Snoopy nose, and because it looked like Snoopy. And so this thing is flying around right now, and the RAP, the R-A-T, that's an acronym for Radar Aircraft Test Bed, and the 55 is the last two digits of its tail number that was assigned to it when it was a trainer back in the early 70s, 73-155, and so that's where RAP 55 comes from. And what it is used for, and is testing and evaluation of stealth technology. And there's still a lot of stealth technology being developed. Shh, don't tell anybody. And
I certainly won't reveal that secret, not on this show. But you bet.
Please don't. Yeah.
Okay.
I could get shot, but it's the reason it has those funny radomes is that so that it can fly next to an airplane and cover all the angles of the airplane to evaluate the stealth performance of its coatings and its configuration from all angles in flight, and it doesn't have to it can cover a lot of angles because it's a big radome, basically. And,
well, Bill, before this particular half hour runs out, I just wanted to let everybody know your website so we can hear that. Because this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. There's a wealth of information there. What is it, Bill Yenny? What's your website?
Well, it's www, and then my name, Bill Yenny, BILLYENNE, all one word, .com.
And, I want to do a shout-out. The Cates family, if my brother's listening, I think they're actually in Las Vegas right now. And I want to mention something to the listening audience here, and I know you've looked at it and you've given it high marks. But he and his team have spent a lot of time working on a website, and this has been around for a long time, called photorecon.net. And you were pretty impressed with it, Bill, not to put words in your mouth. But I think that's interesting that as I'm sitting here, I'm getting a text from my brother here. They're actually sending me, they do this aviation art, and they're actually showing me a picture that one of their artists has created of U.S. Air Force NT-43A. And there it is. It's an amazing one. I'll send you a copy of this. But, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn more about all of what we're talking about, BillYennybooks.com and photorecon.net. And this goes out to a very specialized audience, ladies and gentlemen, that has a really big interest in this whole concept and this subject matter. So I find this fascinating, Bill, that this, yes.
Yeah, what I find fascinating about Photo Recon is not so much that it's a nice website, which it's a nice website, but it's the the photography services that your brother and his team
absolutely
have. It's just absolutely amazing what they do. Go to the website and read about it. And the other thing is you've got so many links to so many other sites within the aviation world that I have it on my desktop.
Well, we appreciate that. We really do appreciate that.
Other things. So it's very good. Take a look at it. Photo Recon.
No, I appreciate your compliments on that too. Again, ladies and gentlemen, 1-800-848-9222. We have so much and so little time to discuss these great subjects with author, historian, and book producer Bill Yenny. We only have a few minutes before the bottom of the hour, so I'm going to save that one for later. But what's the latest on the F-47? Is this an actual aircraft that's in production, or is this just a theoretical prototype on a drawing board, or is that really something that the United States government and Air Force is moving forward on?
Well, they are moving forward on it. It doesn't exist. I guess you'd say that it's a step past the drawing board. It's the eventual replacement for the F-22, and which doesn't seem like it needs to be replaced just yet, but the Air Force always likes to keep a replacement in the works so that it's there when they need it. It's a high performance stealthy jet fighter, Mach 2 jet fighter. It performs the same similar mission to the F-22. As far as when it's going to be flying, I remember a time a few years ago when they were estimating that it was going to be operational by way off in 2025. Well, it didn't make it. And so look for it maybe by the end of the decade. It's built by Boeing. It's the portion of Boeing that used to be McDonnell. And
No, it's an interesting concept because as we talk about sixth-generation fighters, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about, who knows, as we look at the B-21 Raider, the not replacement, I guess, if you want to call it technically, to the B-2s, and look at all the historic, events that have happened in the last few months with B-2s over Iran. The B-21 Raider supposedly has that capability, as you probably know better, to have some sort of AI integral part to it. And I'm sure the way these designs are coming, the F-47, it seems like AI, Bill, is everywhere. And we're coming up on that hard break, ladies and gentlemen. Much more with our special guest, Bill Yenny, author, historian, book producer, BillYennybooks.com. And, of course, a shout-out to my own family, my brother and his website, photorecon.net. Aviation enthusiasts, I'm sure, around the world will be very, very happy to take a look at this, covering all different aspects of aviation, particularly the military side, with great photography and also, as they say, and I certainly commend them, great correspondence that, of course, add to that. And I'm just getting a text from my brother, Bill, and they're going to add you, of course, to Photo Recon, which I think is a high honor, too. So that's great. Ladies and gentlemen, much more to come as we move through time and space. This is the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. The contact number for What We Like is Dialogue, your questions and comments about all these particular subjects. And then we also promised throughout the 2 hours we'll give you a Sky update, which is how this particular program started in the beginning. And now, privileged and honored, per owner and operator John Catsimatidis and the executive staff, to fill a total of 4 hours of your listening, ladies and gentlemen, as we move deeper into your weekend. Much more when we come back on the Dr. Sky Experience with author, historian, and book producer Bill Yunny. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Fighter pilots have ice in their veins. They don't have emotions. They think, anticipate. They know that fear and other concerns cloud your mind from what's going on and what you should do to be involved in. A quote from the second man to walk on the moon, Buzz Aldrin. 33 minutes after the hour, we continue to the top of hour number 1 of the Dr. Sky Experience. Our special guest, and we appreciate him greatly, Bill Yunny, author, historian, and book producer. Bill, you're lighting up the phone lines right now, and in respect to our callers, let's say good morning to Richie in Dutchess County. Richie, good morning. You're on with Bill Yunny. How are you?
Oh, gentlemen, great show. There are many great young pilots, but there are no bad old pilots. I'm just fascinated by all the technology, you know, going back to the Wright brothers and then the spaceships that we sent out into space in the 1950s and 60s. And I'm just fascinated by this technology because America leads the way. We are the front runners. We're the pioneers in this. I've never, ever heard any guys like you who are such intelligent men. You see what's going on in this country, we're being taken over by the third world. Look at New York City, look at Minneapolis, California. The third world will have the highest technology in the world when they are given this country through just sheer population numbers. I never hear any of you guys ever complain about that or bring that up. I'm fascinated by that. Is it that you don't care about the 65 Immigration Act and all the illegals coming in here? They're going to have...
Well, Richie, yeah, hey, let me say this back to you, and I wanted Bill to respond here. We do everything we can. No apologies. We're proud to do American exceptionalism here. And I guess if you're talking generically around the world, that's a whole nother story. But, no, we appreciate talking about American history. And this particular gentleman, I need not remind the audience, has a great depth of knowledge on this subject. Bill, maybe you want to respond back to Richie, and I think his point was well made. Go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, I think yes, it was well made. I think we have an exceptional country, and I think it's something that we need to be vigilant every day with the problems that are facing our country, and I think that I never cease to be honored and amazed by the young people I run into in this country, and I'm talking now about the future of our country. I was a Boy Scout leader for many years, and what I saw as a Boy Scout leader really warmed my heart, because I see what's coming in the younger generations of people born and raised and growing up in this country, and I think we're headed for a good future. Doesn't mean
you're right. Excuse me, and not to cut you short, Bill, but let me just say this. The truth of the matter is people should read books like you write about, what you just talked about the sacrifices that so many young men and women, let's not forget them in their service to our country. That's why we're proud to talk about that on this particular station. That is very proud to talk about this 24/7, about what? Truth, justice, the American way, common sense, and obviously we like to talk about critical thinking. But Richie, if you're still with us, you get the closing comments, so the floor is yours for a moment if you're still with us. Any response?
I do have a big response to this. I'll nail it. Where is this future? Is it in Minneapolis, in New York City, in California? In the 1920s, we shared a culture and a language in this country. And the reason why we had the greatest pilots in World War II, and our guys were young guys out there, their big hero was Their big hero was Charles Lindbergh. And as young kids, they wanted to learn how to fly. They were learning how to fly in the 20s and the 30s. And when the bell rang in the 1940s, those kids answered the bell. We'll never see that again because we don't share a common culture. Their hero was Charles Lindbergh and Babe Ruth.
Well, you're right, Richie, and I hate to cut you short, but time is of the essence here. Your points are well made, and I do hope, sir, that you'll continue to call us here on the Dr. Sky Experience and share this. Thanks, Richie, in the quiet of Dutchess County. Bill, let's continue on because I have so many subjects to talk about, and again, we always open the door to you on a more frequent basis to talk about this when you have particular, new books coming out. I was going to get you to talk about this, and I know it's a very deep subject, but your thoughts on this MH370 mystery that happened back a while ago. This is just an amazing story. Nobody's ever been able to identify where the aircraft is in a short but concise way. What the heck happened to MH370 Malaysian Airline aircraft?
Yeah, it was a 777 in 2014. It took off from Malaysia, headed north toward China, and made a right turn and headed west. And only later did they figure out that after it headed west, it headed south, and it ended up in the Indian Ocean, somewhere in the Indian Ocean. And there are people who have studied this in a lot more detail than me, but I took a look at where there is out there, other than just millions of square miles of water, and out there in the Indian Ocean, pretty much directly where this thing was supposedly headed, there are two islands. There are two French-owned islands. They've been French since 1843. There's Amsterdam Island and St. Paul Island, and St. Paul is uninhabited, and it's 3 square miles. Amsterdam's 22 square miles, and it's got 30 people living on it, and nobody has ever talked about that. It's the only land in that entire eastern Indian Ocean, and
great mystery.
Next to where they did all that searching. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that is I'm sharing with you for the first time my conspiracy theory about what happened to MH.
Interesting. And there are many out there. We're looking forward to another author coming up in the future. His last name is Mr. Wise, and we'll keep all this, in confidence until we can get him to describe in detail what he thinks. He's as an investigative reporter that covers aviation, and we'll be happy to have him sharing his theory. But the bottom line, nobody knows what happened to the airplane. Go ahead.
That's the bottom line. And his research is my research pales by comparison to his work. Mine is.
You do know who I'm talking about, then. Obviously, he's written extensively about this. Appeared on CNN and so many of the other Fox News. And, of course, overseas on Sky News and all the different iterations of talking about it. And we'll save the actual conspiracy theory that he has for another time. But it's interesting, ladies and gentlemen. We see your calls coming in, and we'll do our very best to get you on the air. 1-800-848-9222. As we move toward the top of the hour, ladies and gentlemen, talking with who, if you're just joining us, Bill Yenny, author, historian, book producer. His website, BillYennyBooks.com. Always welcome here. And a shout-out to my own family, Brother Joe in Las Vegas with Dave. They're out there doing this for so many years, photorecon.net. And I implore people out there kindly to go and check this out if you're a big fan of the subjects of aviation. This, a very interesting story, as we talk about the history, not only of aviation, but about things that are coming. And stay tuned in hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen. A retired Lieutenant Colonel of the United States Air Force is going to be joining us for the hour. He has lots of experience in the cockpit, flying so many iterations of military aircraft, and, of course, so many other types of aircraft that I'm sure everybody here would like to hear about on this particular show. What I'm going to do, Bill, is give everybody the quick Sky update that everybody says to me, you'd forgot to do the Sky update. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. As we transition from August to September, The moon, of course, if you're looking out live in the western part of the United States or other parts of the world, the eastern part of the United States, the moon may have set already, but moving on to first quarter. We're still looking at the remnants of the Perseid meteor shower, which if you look in the northeast sky after midnight till dawn, yes, ladies and gentlemen, even the temperatures here in Phoenix have slowly declined. We got hit, as many of you saw in the national media, by a most incredible Haboob windstorm here, almost biblical proportion-like. That indeed was something, but skies should clear, and September promises to be a lot more open as far as clearer skies. The best month for viewing skies in the northern hemisphere, at least in the United States, is actually during the months of late September and early October, maybe even stretching it all the way to the very end. Bill Yenny, interesting stuff as we go way above the areas that aircraft fly. But again, is there one specific book that has just come out in about a minute or two before we go to the break? Just tell us about maybe one of the most recent books that you've had that people can know about.
Well, I was telling you about The Ones Who Got Away. That's the one that I'm most proud of right at the moment. So that'll be the one.
Very interesting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up on that break. As you know, in radio, we'll be right back. More with our special guest, Bill Yenny, and we'll do our best to get all of you that are in the queue here on the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I fly because it releases my mind from the tyranny of petty things. A great quote from Unknown. As we continue at 47 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, Bill Yenny, author, historian, and book producer. Let's say good morning to Bill in Long Island. You've been patient. How are you this morning, sir?
Bill in Huntington?
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead, my friend.
Okay. If it was a different one, okay. Now, most people, they think that jets were developed by the Nazis, okay? But I've heard of another one that was French in the late 30s. Did that ever amount to anything?
Interesting question, Bill. And we go to our Bill Yenny.
Well, the development of jet aircraft was taking place in a lot of countries. It was taking place in Britain, and it was taking place in the United States, and it was taking place in Germany. And there were also some attempts being made in Italy and elsewhere. But it was the Germans who won the race and got the first flight of a jet aircraft.
Totally amazing story, Bill.
But not by much. Not by much. And There were other people nipping at their heels.
Bill, I thank you for your call. We're going to move forward because we've got a big caller line up here. But let's go out to Las Vegas. And, of course, without further ado, let me say hello to my own brother, Joe Cates, as we put Bill Yenny and Joe together. Good evening, Joe. How are you this morning or this evening out there? How are you?
Good evening, Steve. Can you hear me well?
I sure can. Go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say it's a true honor to be on the phone with such an aviation author. I've got a modest library at home, as you know, and most of the books that I value a lot are Bill Yenny done, books by him. And the Lockheed story, the Boeing, the Evergreen, it just goes on and on. But one of the books that I like so much is the Area 51 Black Jets. And that book really gets into what you guys were talking about tonight and the whole concept of the Area 51 and how it started and all the amazing technology that was tested out there that we know of. And I think it's a great testament what he wrote in that book, Area 51 Black Jets. And we're also putting that actual book on the Photo Recon front page right now as a link to Bill Yenny's books. And we just did that right now as we're talking right now. So I just want to say hello, Bill. I'm a big fan, and I've read a lot of your stuff, and I have a library of a lot of good books. So thank you for what you do.
Well, I'm honored to be on your shelf, Joe.
There you go. And if I can ask Brother Joe this, obviously that Rat 55, I just took a look at that. Maybe you want to send that out, and everybody, ladies and gentlemen, can go to photorecon.net and look at the artwork that they do. Believe me, folks, this is fascinating. And for President Donald John Trump, you guys did an amazing Air Force, the Air Force One poster that I think is just knocking it out of the park. So thank you for what you guys do.
Well, thank you. And actually that we have several features on the site of the artwork that Dave does. And we do these for the military retirements and things like that of aircraft. And we honor special aircraft through these 12 by 18 lithographs that we do market them, but we're not talking about that right now. But we can get certain ones to certain people. But we'd be happy to get a few samples out to Bill. But that's something we do on the side. We do have them on Recon throughout the pages there. You'll see Dave has done several, and even got you sitting with one person that we both got to talk to, and that was Frank Murray, A-12 pilot. And you're sitting there holding one of our prints in one of the pictures, so the fans can go out and the Bill.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about, not to cut you short, Brother Joe, but it's all about American exceptionalism and our dedication to those that gave a sacrifice in all branches about the true story of America that needs to be told. So thank you. Be safe out there in Las Vegas, and don't go up to Area 51 tonight. I would certainly not.
We're headed up now.
Are you?
No.
There you go. Have a good morning, guys. And yeah, go ahead. I appreciate your time. Let's welcome as many callers as we can get here. Mark in New York, you've been patient. You're on with Bill Yenny. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, nice to talk to you both. You were talking about the great books about aviation, and it brings to mind one of the ones I read as a kid. I couldn't put it down. Wind, Sand, and Stars by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. It's about the earliest days of individual pilots in open planes flying over the Pyrenees, above the Sahara, and along the snowy ramparts of the Andes. And alone with no radios, just brave men and the wind, the sand, and the stars. He was delivering postal deliveries along the way, but he was an early pilot and philosopher, and these are memoirs. These days, young people don't read very much. They don't read books. But if they want to read one that's memorable and exciting, Wind, Sand, and Stars.
That's amazing. I want to hear from you, Mark. Are you also a military veteran, if you don't mind sharing that with us? Tell us.
I'm not military, but apparently people that worked at NASA are considered the equivalent. I was told that I was essential at that time to the defense of the United States.
Wow. That's a great career. Wow, Bill Yenny, what do you think?
I mentioned previously I'd worked at the Goddard Institute for Space Study.
Wow, that's interesting. You'd be a good interview yourself. We can talk about that in the future. And we salute, again, all the men and women who give the dedication to this great country in many, many ways. And we do appreciate your commentary here, Mark. Have a good morning, and hope you'll continue to be part of our Dr. Sky Experience family as we continue to grow it with the power of Talk Radio 77 WABC. Bill, you get the floor. Let's wrap up, as sad as it is to go to the top of the hour. We hate to lose you on the contact here, but we'll have you back, of course, and I hope you'll agree to do that in the future. But give us some other look-sees. Yeah, I have a couple of other quick questions that I wanted you to respond to. And this is such an amazing story. Define to us what truly is a military ace. Now, this is fascinating because we both know, that is my brother, and maybe many people out there, the Vietnam ace of the Air Force of Vietnam, and General Steve Ritchie, who we've known for many, many years. I don't know if he's passed on. I mean, I don't know. But describe to us so everybody understands, what's a military ace when it comes to aviation? This is an interesting answer.
Yeah, and an air ace is somebody who has shot down 5 enemy aircraft in aerial combat. Somebody who has fought with these aircraft, with these pilots, and has succeeded in shooting down 5 of them. The first guys who did that were French, and the term was coined for them back in the First World War. Roland Garros, the famous tennis player, also a pilot, he was the first man to shoot down 5 German airplanes. And in World War II, there were thousands of aces, and there were 100 aces in the Korean War, and there have been fewer than 100 aces since the Korean War.
Well, Bill, this is interesting. A little sideline story that I think many people will find kind of interesting. I do. back in maybe about 15 years ago with the Collings Foundation. They did a lot of restoration of aircraft, the old warbirds. We found out that General Steve Ritchie's actual F-4 Phantom was redone by the Collings Foundation. And here he is, short stature pilot, the first time we met him. And he introduces us. We go to the flight line, and we see this massive ship. If anybody's not seen a F-4 Phantom, a pretty big McDonnell Douglas aircraft of its time. So he goes and says to me, he goes and kind of puts his hand over his mouth. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to light up this place." And I go, "What?" So sure enough, he goes down the runway. And the Scottsdale Airport up there in North Scottsdale, it's a lot of corporate jets and all kinds of private aviation. So the announcer goes, he runs it, and he burns up, he starts coming down the runway with those afterburners glowing orange. And what does he do, Bill Yenny? He flies low over the control tower, so powerful, the blast, he set off every car alarm, and I don't know if he was welcome back. he just blasted that thing over the top, and I think a lot of people were kind of surprised by that. I loved it, but a lot of people were kind of like, "Oh, that's terrible." But the power of that jet, that's amazing.
Well, yes.
Totally incredible. And I remember seeing in New Mexico, this dates me back in the 1960s, when the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds actually chose the F-4 Phantom as their flying platform for formation. My goodness, it sounded like the earth rocked when all those formation F-4s came across the ground. What a big airship, right? What a big aircraft.
It was.
Totally amazing stuff. Bill Yenny, lots of subjects to talk about here. Maybe we got a few minutes to ask you about this. There's something called the X-37 space plane, and this is a tiny iteration, ladies and gentlemen, of the U.S. space shuttle, doing all kinds of mysterious things, goes up for 600, 700, 800, 900 days. What can you tell us in a couple of minutes about the X-37? This is fascinating.
Well, it's a robot reusable spacecraft. It's a space plane. It's launched vertically like the space shuttle, and it lands like an airplane, like the space shuttle did. It's a robot airplane. It was owned by the Air Force for a while. Now it's owned by the Space Force. Nobody knows what it does. It's never been revealed what it does when it's up there. And as you said, it's been up there. It's had 3 missions of over 700 days in space. 1 mission of 908 days, took off in 2020 and didn't get back until 2022. It's a test bed for a lot of technology, and beyond that, nobody really knows what it does.
And also, maybe you have more information about this for a future show, but I was just pulling something up here that we also do on another program, and we're privileged and honored to be able to do that on the Sunday morning show. John Katsimatidis is the Sunday Roundtable program. We've talked about China's copycat of this particular craft. Apparently, they have one like it. We still don't know what they're doing, but apparently it has a robotic arm, and it's released something into space, or it can actually, not to sound nefarious toward the Chinese, but it has the capability of sending out some kind of a kinetic missile or something that could hit or destroy satellites in space. That's why I think it's good to have Space Force, don't you?
Yeah, well, these kinetic missiles, that's old technology. A kinetic missile is, I had a thing that fired kinetic missiles, deadly kinetic missils, when I was 10 years old. It was called a Remington 22. And
yes, and I had a Nerf gun at one time. Yeah. Bill Yenny, I hate to cut you short, but thank you for all you do, and we do appreciate it. BillYennyBooks.com. Stay tuned for hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen. The Dr. Sky Experience continues with retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dave Willingham. He's going to be joining us talking about more about the wonders of flight and his career here on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
6 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, moving deeper and deeper into the dialogue zone here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Proudly, and saying it again, proudly to be here on Talk Radio 77, WABC. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue in hour number 2, the main theme of these 2 hours is talking about aviation. We want to thank aviation author, historian Bill Yenny for his contribution. And as we move into hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen, just to remind you, if you have an email that you'd like to send to me, that's a source possibly where we get some future guests, and we do appreciate that. Good suggestions. The email is drsky, Dr. Sky at wabcradio.com. And while you're at it, not only to listen to the archival Dr. Sky podcast, but what about all the other great talk show hosts 24/7 here on this great radio station? Go to wabcradio.com or Red Apple Audio Networks. And again, a thank you from the bottom of my heart to our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, navigating this radio show out into the cosmos, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're listening to us on the West Coast, somewhere in the other parts of America, the East Coast, around the nation, around the world, as we like to say, and maybe, who knows, even out to the cosmos. As we continue to keep the theme of aviation, let's welcome to the airwaves retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dave Willingham. He and I met just a couple of months ago, and it was so interesting to have this conversation that we'll be sharing with the listeners here with the Dr. Sky Experience. Good morning, Dave. Thanks for joining us on this particular evening. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Dr. Sky. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, my friend. I don't know if you heard the other hour, but I thought a very interesting hour with Bill Yenny. So many books that he's written. I mean, he hits the mark. I mean, if we're talking about American exceptionalism, about the young men and women of World War II and other, particular horrible wars, look at the sacrifices. And we talked specifically about the bomber pilots on B-17s, the 24s, the 25s, and we could go on, and the fighter pilots, too. But give us a little look-see about yourself. I mean, you have an extensive, I have it here, it would take me the entire show to read every one of your qualifications, but appreciate you here. Just give us a look-see about your background so we can move and share with people about things they may not know and certainly want to know about the world of aviation.
Well, Steve, I'm as you had mentioned before, I was an Air Force pilot, retired as Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force, and went on to retire as a airline pilot. I spent 28 years in the Air Force. I spent 26 years flying there for the airlines. I loved aviation. I loved every aspect of aviation as a small boy, and I said I wanted to pursue that. In fact, take a look at all of your listeners here. It doesn't take a genius to be a pilot. It doesn't take extraordinary person. It doesn't take extraordinary intelligence or aptitude. Mm-hmm. It takes a love of aviation. And I am a solid C student. I am a graduate of a community college and a state school, and I feel like I have achieved that which I have desired, and that's to explore as many facets of aviation as I could, and it has been absolutely wonderful. Totally enjoyed it.
Congratulations to you and the career that we're about to talk about. And it's so amazing. I mean, looking at some of the aircraft ratings that you have, we'll get into some of these different aircraft, particularly the commercial aircraft, because I'm sure many people out there, a big misgiving might be, and I'm not saying, any individual show doing this or any individual host, but the fear of flying for many. My grandmother, God bless her, would never get on an airplane. She was always fearful her entire life. That's something, of course, that maybe many people have. But tell us, this is a fact now, of all the vehicle of transportation, whether we talk about driving cars, riding motorcycles, doing that. Tell me what you told me off air about the relative safety of aviation overall. Let's hear that from you. This is important.
Well, sure, Steve. You've heard this coined before, and it's that you're much, much safer in the aircraft than you are driving to the airport. And wow. Statistics really, really bear that out. Aviation in its infancy used to be a hot rod, daredevil game. And then through the decades, as we've become much more smarter and do the job much more efficient and have spent millions of hours from engineering to piloting to research and development on aircraft, things have gotten better and better and better and better. But we still never have to forget that it's still a miracle that we can actually fly and turn it into such a mundane experience. So it is, once again, much safer in the aircraft than it is driving to the airport.
No, it's a well-made statement, and it's factual. I mean, you back it up. There's backup information on this. Department of Transportation, I'm sure other agencies around the world. And, of course, when airplanes do auger in, as Chuck Yeager always told me when we did an interview, he said they don't crash. He said they auger. But regardless, your point is well made here. And this is an interesting conversation because if you look at the history of aviation, and we look at exactly when it was started, allegedly here in the United States, Dave, 122 years since Wilbur and Orville Wright made these flights. I mean, I'm amazed. I mean, you sit in the seat, left, right seat, all throughout your career, the pilot, the co-pilot, flight engineers. I mean, isn't it just totally a mind-blowing experience to see what they did then and what we have now, 122 years later? That isn't all that much time in the course of history, right? It's amazing.
No, it's not that much time at all. In fact, that's powered flight, manned-powered flight. I'd call it manned maneuvering flight. Of course, the Wright brothers have gotten much of the credit for that, and as well they should have, because they actually developed the science behind the flight. However, the French and the Russians, they all were studying flight. They were using flight in hot air balloons, lighter than air, 100 years before that. But once again, we're talking about manned maneuvering flight to where it's actually a science, and it's equitable. You can actually plan something versus just drifting on the wind.
Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, as we consider, and we certainly welcome dialogue to this particular show, the Dr. Sky Experience. We love dialogue. If you have questions or comments to our special guest here in hour number 2, the contact number, 1-800-848-9222, simply 1-800-848-9222. And if I may just call you Dave, we'll continue on to discuss these various interest areas that we have. But one of them, knowing that you are a seasoned helicopter pilot with the ratings and credentials, let's go back to something that's very fresh in my mind and a very sad moment in American aviation history. Let's go back to January 29th, 2025. As many people may or may not know, reliving the experience of the American Airlines Bombardier CRJ-700, Flight 5342, in a collision with a U.S. Army UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter. I remember it. You remember it. People out there listening remember this. You see this rather fuzzy video showing a helicopter, which looked like a helicopter with its lights, and an aircraft on descent. Describe that whole experience as what happened there, and not to lay blame here. I mean, that's certainly not my intention. Describe the environment there, because that's a very heavily trafficked area, right? Correct? Obviously, in the nation's capital. It is,
Steve. And I feel very comfortable about talking with this one specifically because I've seen it from both sides.
Okay.
And when I used to fly with Pan American World Airways, we're flying 727s. We'd fly into Reagan National, and at that time it was just National Airport. The approaches, I would fly in that as a fixed-wing jet pilot. And then later on in life, I've been flying the Black Hawk helicopters with the Air Force, called Payhawk helicopters.
Yes.
And I was on the flip side of that coin, where I was down the helicopter coming down south on the Potomac, and I was seeing all the aircraft landing on Reagan National. I have to tell you, at the time, and I will not place any blame on any of these events on
sure.
I won't point fingers, because it's not just usually not just one event that causes a crash. It's a series of events that have failed.
Right, and we're not the NTSB, obviously, so we're not going to go down that path. Right.
Yeah, and this one's so fresh. Actually, there's an investigation still going on. But the fact was, there's two pilots and a crew chief on that Black Hawk. There's Captain Rebecca Lobach. There's a CW2, Chief Warrant Officer 2, and I think Andy, I can't even remember, Andy Eves, and then there's a Sergeant O'Hare, which was the crew chief. And
sure.
The experience level in that aircraft was Rebecca had, she was 28 years old, had about 450 hours. Andy was 39 years old. He had about almost 1,000 hours. And the crew chief, Ryan, he had almost over 1,000 hours. So experience level, and I have to tell your viewers, it's apples and oranges, because an hour in a helicopter, most helicopters you're hands-on all the time. You don't have a few helicopters have autopilots, but Generally, you're flying in a tactical environment below 500 feet. You're working both feet and both hands, and usually your mouth at the same time. So it's very labor intensive. So 1 hour of flight time in a helicopter is equal to about 10 hours of flight time in a jet, where you can just get up to cruise, throw the autopilot on, and take a nap.
Wow, never knew that. So it's an intensive environment. In other words, you got to be really paying attention to everything, and it kind of can tire you out if you slip away. Right.
It is, and you have to make a helicopter fly. Airplanes are inherently stable. That means you can go in there, you can start the engine up. I could get into a Cessna or a jet. You start it up on the ramp, and you point it in an open field. You push the throttle up, and if it's trimmed up right, the thing will bounce around, and eventually it'll kind of take off and wander off somewhere and splat itself. But helicopters, you hop in it, you run the throttle all the way up, and it'll just sit there until it tears itself apart or runs out of fuel, one of the two. You got to make that thing fly. Mm-hmm. So, and it's pretty busy, and it's very busy on helicopter. You're, like I said, you're using all your appendages. In the other jet, there was I believe in that American jet, it was a CJ700, Jonathan Campos. Now, he had 4,000 hours. He was 34 years old. Sam Lilly was the first officer, and he was 28 years old and had 2,500 hours. So you look at them, they have like 6,000, 7,000 hours between them. Mm-hmm. It was truly unfortunate. They were given a approach to runway 1, which is the north-south runway. And generally speaking, if they took and maintained that approach on the runway 1, they would have had this lateral deconfliction where the helicopter would be flying on the east side of the Potomac and the jet would be on the west side of the Potomac, and both going in opposite directions. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, this time, they were given a visual approach and told to execute that approach to runway 33, which is basically about a 30-degree offset. They had to jink to the right, and then they make a left turn, and their final approach course runs right across the flight path of that helicopter.
It sure
and I
does,
remember
right?
at the helicopter, I remember being in a Black Hawk coming down the Potomac, because we had a sister unit up in Suffolk, New York. We constantly fly up and back, exchanging aircraft and doing different missions. And I just thought, I was coming down, and you hear the controller at Washington National say, "Hey, you need to go and anchor at this point, hold until this traffic is clear." And looking at it and thinking, that aircraft, that jet aircraft, has to cross exactly right in the glide path of a helicopter on a low-level route, and they're both doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And it was a terrible, terrible TERPed-out approach, and TERPS is short for its Terminal Approach Procedures. And I just thought, what a recipe for disaster that is. And it's been a testament over the years to controllers, to pilots, to the air traffic control system, that the situational awareness and the professionalism of these folks who speak up and say, I don't like that, I'm going to hold here and spin left, or I'm going to break the approach off, I'm going to go around. And that has been able to negate accidents, unfortunately.
Well, it's a very sad state of affairs. I mean, look, again, without placing blame, we're not the NTSB, we're not here to do that. That would be wrong, because I, especially myself as host, I have no knowledge of this. You're a pilot. But here's the interesting thing, ladies and gentlemen. If you have questions, I mean, this is a very sad moment in aviation history. That on the date of this past, January the 29th. Our number here, 1-800-848-9222, a generality of questions you could be asking all about these subjects. And maybe you know a little bit about this particular incident that we're talking about right now. Sad but true. But let me ask you this, as if you would look at this, and the viewers, because radio's in the mind of, it's like a theater of the mind, of course. It's not television. But if you look at it like a three-dimensional pipe, in other words, that helicopter path has to be exactly, you can't waver from that. Is that what I'm understanding? And that the aircraft coming in have their own three-dimensional path. So you get trouble if those two collide. So what would it be? A difference of altitude with somebody in the equation? Not to lay blame. Was the helicopter factually too high, too low? What would you say on that as compared to the regular jet airliner coming in?
Well, the jet airliner has less maneuverability at that time. Jets fly fast and they fly high. But they have to come in and land, they have to take off, so they have to fly in that regime anywhere between 0 to 1,000 feet. Well, 0 to 500 feet is where helicopters live. That's the helicopter regime. They fly in a slower area. They fly much lower to the ground. Their main thrust is, hey, we don't want to hit something coming up from the ground. We don't want to hit a pole, another aircraft, another helicopter. We don't want to hit a kite flying out there, a balloon. There's so many obstacles that are under 500 feet that's their main thrust is to do that. So, in this type of case, you have to deconflict. It has to be the terminal approach has to be changed, and you either have to change the lateral offsets to where you don't have that potential for this crossing at that very, very, very close, tight tolerance. And the news has said a lot about, well, this helicopter is off by 125 feet, and there's been all counterpoints on the news too that the tolerances are really 75 feet. Plus or minus on your altimeters, you have to be 75 feet plus or minus each altimeter, and then also with the elevation of the field when you take off, that's one of the items that you check. But that's a barometric altimeter, and at 500 feet, most, if not all the time, you're looking at your radar altimeter. Now, radar altimeter actually is another altimeter. It gives you your AGL or your altitude above the ground level. Okay. And you're much more concerned about that because that represents an obstacle below your aircraft, i.e. the ground coming up or something, a structure down below you. You want to make sure that you have ground clearance because you don't want the ground to come up and smack you. Then that would be your bad day. Mm-hmm. But a barometric altimeter, although you do pay close attention to it, especially in a very tight environment like that, in that Class B airspace and the corridors that fly below it, you do have tolerances, and we don't know if they were distracted. We don't know if I know that
just a sad event, right? A very sad event in aviation, helicopter and a commercial jet. Yes,
you do. And you're flying, and it's like your self-survival technique is, especially flying at night. Now, remember, this is not go-to-color day. And they said they were on and off goggles, which are the night vision goggles.
Correct.
As you're flying, it could be they may have got a bounce on the radar altimeter, but you naturally want to climb a little bit. It's kind of a self-preservation technique. And generally speaking, that saves your life. In this situation, it placed them in a position where they were in direct conflict with another aircraft. So it's very sad that happened.
Absolutely. No, the memory of those souls will never be forgotten. But like we said, and we'll repeat it again, we're not the NTSB. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to understand from people like yourself who know this as far as being a pilot and a well-seasoned one. If you're just joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience, to the top of hour number 2, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel David Willingham. He's joining us as a follow to the conversation we just had with author Bill Yenny on his great aviation books. The whole subject matter as we transition, ladies and gentlemen, back to more of our main themes, astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, here on the Dr. Sky Experience. But closer to home, we only have a few minutes, Dave, before the bottom of the hour, and if I'm not doing justice or not giving you the time, I apologize, but in New York City, the horrific helicopter crash with the tourist that came from overseas. The bottom line on that tourist helicopter, as I like to describe it, there's something they call, and I don't know if this is the correct term, forgive me, and ladies and gentlemen, if it's called the wrong thing, but something in the helicopter world was called the Jesus nut on top of that rotor mast. Is that effectively correct? And was that possibly a reason that helicopter went down, because some loose parts on top of the mast? Just curious.
It very well could be. You're talking about, to bring your readers up, your listeners up to speed, you had basically a mid-air breakup. It didn't hit anything. Did not hit another structure aircraft out there, and that's a very, very rare event to have happen. Normally, the structure of aircraft, helicopters, anything flying, has been tested to the point where it's pretty darn reliable. But things happen. There's a couple axioms that says if you can get it off the ground, you can crash in it, and if you can fly in it, you can crash in it. Mm-hmm. So in this particular case, it looks like there's a structural failure. And at that point in time, when they had a massive failure like that in the airframe, there's nothing you can do. You're along for the ride. The best pilot in the world, Chuck Yeager, could be behind that stick. Mm-hmm. And that you just had your bad day. Your luck ran out that day. So
Yes.
Once again, poor souls on that one.
Well, in the mind's eye, ladies and gentlemen, since obviously radio's theater of the mind, the dynamics of flight characteristics is so different because I've yet to see, other than some of these horribly gigantic, monstrous Russian helicopters that they built that look like they had stubby wings, but the bottom line is, without being ridiculous, I don't see too many helicopters that have massive wings for flight support. So you're right. So the dynamics of that. And really quick, before we hit the bottom of the hour break, that little tiny propeller in the back, isn't that to keep the whole fuselage from spinning around in a circle? So it maintains its, what, stability? Is that a simple way to describe that little rotor that's in the back, the tiny little thing at the tail?
That's a great description of it, Captain Sky. And what that is on a conventional helicopter, you have one main rotor right above you, and that provides torque. And if we learn for high school physics that when you spin an item one way in a rotation, you have an equal and opposite action or motion that wants to happen below you. See, the helicopter wants to turn the other way that the rotor's turning. So Igor Sikorsky came up with this great, said, I'll take another fan, I'll tap off the power, and I'll make that fan 90 degrees and opposite to the directional spinning of the aircraft, and then we'll just blow air that way, and we'll stop that torque from happening. That's a very oversimplistic way of saying it. But there are other helicopters out there that don't have tail rotors, but they usually have two rotors that counteract each other's torque. So
totally amazing.
You have to negate the torque somehow.
And we've seen them in the Phoenix PD here out in Arizona. I'm sure other places of days gone by. The Notar helicopter, which as you described so well and accurate, did not have that little tiny propeller. It uses bleed gases, I guess, to stabilize the fuselage, which is quite an interesting concept.
That's right. Basically, it's a ducted fan, and they just turn that duct at the end of that tube to the direction where you need to not turn, and that provides that anti-torque force.
Ladies and gentlemen, 1-800-848-9222. No question is too difficult for our special guest as we bring you in many, many ways, ladies and gentlemen, per the Dr. Sky email, drsky@wabcradio.com. Not every guest that you recommend will get on the air, but we certainly talk about that. And if you'd like to send us an email, we appreciate it. Much more when we come back. We're going to talk about what it's like to fly some of these commercial aircraft, maybe from the way that you never heard because you were sitting in the seats and they're up in the front doing what they do best. More with retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel David Willingham. He's joining us, and proud to have him and call him a friend here on the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back after these important announcements as we bring you the last half hour as we move to hour number 2.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Sometimes flying seems too godlike to be attained by man. Sometimes the world from above seems too beautiful, too wonderful, too distant for human eyes to see. A quote from an amazing aviator of days gone by whose memory will always be there, Charles A. Lindbergh. 32 minutes after the hour, we're continuing with our special guest on the Dr. Sky Experience, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dave Willingham. He's joining us here. Dave, welcome back. Very interesting to hear from the astronauts who walked on the moon. So many wonderful experiences that we have here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Thanks for being with us again, and I know it's maybe late for you, but we, again, appreciate your time. Let's continue to talk about the different type of aircraft ratings. And this is something many people out there may never experience because you get on the commercial airplane, and maybe sometimes the captain and co-pilot will say hi. You know, my experiences with certain airlines, they'd greet you, and you could actually stick your head in the cockpit area, but that was a short-lived experience. You've rated on the Boeing 777, the MD-11, the MD-10, the DC-10, the L-300, in case people don't know, I call it the old C-141 Starlifter, retired in 2006, the Learjet, which is an amazing story, and the R-22. So of all of these, I got to ask you as an aviator in the commercial world, which one did you really find the biggest affinity for as far as ease, maybe the fun of flying it, and your experience? What would you say?
Well, Doctor, that's a tough one. Every single aircraft was fun to fly. And they each had their own fortes. They each had their own drawbacks.
Yes.
My last airplane I was flying was the 777, and what a dream to fly that. It was a real pilot's airplane. That's because that was at the tail end of years and decades of research. They had human factors built into that. The people who we stand upon their shoulders are the ones who were the pioneers in aviation, and they're the ones who had found all the flaws and the mishaps. We're the beneficiary of flying comfortable, really reliable aircraft and having a very great air traffic control network, basically globally. So many people that. So yes, the 777 was awesome. The MD-11 was a magic carpet, took me all over the world. Same thing with the triple. Those are all strategic aircraft. The 141, once again, that was what I cut my teeth in. And that took me all over the world too. What a fantastic way for young men and young women to travel all over the globe and to fly themselves. It's a plug for the Air Force. It's a plug for the armed forces.
Yeah, amazing.
It builds character. It builds self-reliance. And it really is a magic carpet to the entire world. And, man, it was fun to fly it all. We did not just strategic flying in the 141. We also did drops where you open up and push paratroopers out, did cargo drops. It's different than flying fighter aircraft or fast-moving aircraft. Once again, the MD-11s, the DC-10s, very large aircraft. They're global. You just learn you go to so many different.
No, it must be amazing to fly these. But on an astronomical note, you probably know this. That C-141 of one of its iterations was used as the Kuiper Airborne Observatory long before the Sophia plane that we were privileged and honored to fly on as guests in media. But the reason I wanted to mention that, going back to the 777. Maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but on these aircraft, I watched these videos from a guy on Facebook called Captain Bob. And I don't know how this guy has a life. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but people should check him out. Have you ever seen him, Dave? This is interesting. Captain Bob.
I've seen one or two of them, but he is a very interesting fellow.
But what he does, he'll take you on a tour. I don't think he's ever home. He probably doesn't have a home life, because he's always transporting airplanes to different places where they can strip them down or somebody bought one. But here's the thing I want to ask you about. Many people may not know this. On maybe every 777, I don't know, but he goes back to the back where you think there's a lavatory, and he has this little door that he opens, and he goes upstairs, and there's like an entire area for where the flight exchange crew can actually sleep. I never knew they had that, but then again, I don't fly 777s. Is that true on most of those 777s? They have a little area where you can sleep that nobody knows you're up there.
There is. It's based on the configuration of the aircraft. I was flying the Foxtrot models, or the 777-200F, which was the freighter models. And we actually had dedicated bunks there. We had two bunks, and we had first-class seats that we could go back there and rest. And you actually, when you fly 16-hour legs, you fly double cruise, and one crew's up flying, the other one's resting.
I would imagine you need some sleep. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say the other models, so other major airlines fly their passengers, they have dedicated sleep areas too. So people should feel very good about that, and they know that their pilots are up there getting rest, because when they need it during their approach, you don't want some sleepy eyes behind the yoke.
Somebody said this. I'm not reading this, and I wonder if you could corroborate, see if I'm right. Somebody once told me, and I think it was Joe Sutter, who we had an interview with before he passed, the designer of the 747 from Boeing, said something like the old iteration of the 747, like the 200 model, he said it uses about a gallon of fuel every minute, or is it every second? Because if they're using that much fuel, it's out of my budget. So imagine that. Yeah. Well, what kind of fuel consumption, let's go back to your aircraft, that a 777 would consume if you looked at it in a short period of time? Any idea?
Yeah, well, actually, just do some quick math. A 777, our 777s had a range of about 8,000 miles. The fuel would be, we take on about 48,000 gallons of fuel.
Sure.
To get that far. And when we took off, we weighed almost 750,000 pounds. So you just divide take 48,000 gallons divided by 8,500 miles, and there you go with that answer.
What mileage? That's not the best mileage, but I guess you got a lot of weight there. Oh. Incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of weight, but people want their stuff, and they want it there at 0.87 Mach.
They sure do. And how dare any airline lose their luggage, right? Oh, God, but it's not. See, a lot of people bring too much stuff on the airplanes. Wouldn't you agree, pilot? I mean, you have people bringing, a horse on board, or they'll bring a giant, I don't know, they got too many things, and then they hold the whole flight up, right? Isn't that incredible? That's
terrible. Yeah, it depends how the operation of that, either the freight or the passenger is.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes if they don't have rigid rules about how to do things and what you can bring on, you can see things they get gummed up pretty hard. So
1-800-848-9222, still an opportunity for you, ladies and gentlemen, in the form of dialogue to give us some questions and comments, or make a statement about aircraft or some things you want to know. Our special guest, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel David Willingham. He's kind enough to join us for the hour. Let's take this one in a few moments. You're flying the Boeing 777. What people may not know about that particular aircraft, you're the pilot, let's say, and the co-pilot. Walk us through some of the things that they're doing, the pre-check, because a lot of people, you see the pilots are people walking around outside, and it's not just the, very important baggage handlers, thank God for them. What's some of the pre-flight things that people need to know about so they understand what's going on up front or around the airplane before you leave?
Sure. We'll just bring this in a synopsis. And we'll try to condense a very long flight to just 1 minute here. Mm-hmm. So the flight starts in the ready room, or it starts in base operations. And by that means that the pilots will be in checking the weather. They'll be checking the NOTAMs, which are notices to airmen. That lets them know what's going on, if there's any outages, if there's any facilities down, what's up, what's running, what's not. Some important stuff gets fed to the air crew. It's by a dispatcher, and the dispatcher is also usually a rated pilot. And that's their job. They will feed all that there to make sure that that crew has the most up-to-date information for their flight, wherever they may go.
Sure.
So with that being said, you head out to the aircraft. Once you get to the aircraft, usually you have division of duties, and that's the base. It's going to be brought about by the operator. Will have their standards of operation. One pilot will do a walk-around. They'll walk around, make sure that all the parts and pieces are on the aircraft. This is in addition to what maintenance will do. Mm-hmm. Maintenance will get prepped the jet prior to the crew coming out. So one aircraft will be walking around. As a passenger, you may see one pilot walking around with a flashlight out there at nighttime, or at the time he'll have a little vest on, or she'll have a little vest on. And then the other pilot is up in the cockpit. They're getting ready. They're presetting the frequencies. They're turning all the computers on. They're setting the gyros up. They're putting the positions in the navigation computers. They're loading the routes in the flight management computers. Then they merge, both pilots merge up there. They'll run pre-flight checklists. And that means they'll get the aircraft ready to cockpit, ready for the start, and ready for the taxi. Okay? And one of the very important things I don't want to gloss over is that even though you have standards, you'll also have, it's called a pre-flight briefing. The captain will usually brief the crew as to how he wants to operate that aircraft, what's expected out of them, and then how to delineate the duties. He'll also take input from the crew and make sure that the crew is properly rested, and to see if there's any issues that will affect the flight, and then he can either work around it or deal with that as it may happen. They'll run the checklist. They'll start with the motors, taxi out, take off, hopefully very uneventful. We always try to keep it boring, and then boring flights are good. You fly in the most economical means to your destination. That usually means you climb up to somewhere between 30,000 to 40,000 feet, fly to your destination. You do a descent. All this time, you keep on getting all this information. You're getting electronic information fed to the aircraft about your weather, about your flight conditions, about the state of the aircraft, about conditions on the ground. So once again, that crew is taking all this information in, and they're executing the approach, the landing, and then after the landing, you run some more checklists, and that means that you're running then basically the no-fly checklist. We're not going to fly anymore, so we better start gearing the airplane down. You're taxiing in. As you pull into the chocks are in, you put the power on the aircraft, and then the crew will run a shutdown checklist, and then the passengers are usually getting about ready to get up and get out.
No, it's amazing. You've done a yeoman's job of explaining this in such a short time before we go to the break here. But no, not to cut you short on this. This is fascinating to make the statement once again that of all the forms of transportation, your statement is absolutely, valid, and I believe it seriously because I've read this too, That still, aviation, meaning commercial aviation, is still considered what? The safest of all these modes of transportation, and it goes by the number of flights to the number of hours flown, and obviously that's an important statement. Dave, we're coming up on that break, the last one of this particular hour. Still time, ladies and gentlemen. If you have questions or concerns about aviation, civil aviation, commercial aviation, and all other aspects of what we're talking about, the people who fly these airplanes, you really don't get a chance to talk with. Here is your opportunity, 1-800-848-9222. And we'll be right back. And thanking you, ladies and gentlemen, around the nation, around the world, listening to this archival program that you'll find in the podcast section at WABCRadio.com, so you can listen to it in perpetuity. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Man must rise above the earth, to the top of the atmosphere and beyond, for only thus will he fully understand the world in which he lives. A quote, ladies and gentlemen, a long time ago from Socrates. He must have known something. 48 minutes after the hour, we continue with our very special guest as we move to the top of the hour, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dave Willingham. He joins us to the top of the hour, ladies and gentlemen, and let's see now. Let's go to the callers. I want to make sure we have the caller list correct here. Good morning, Bill in Manhattan. Your question or comment. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi, good morning. I'd like to ask your guest what he thinks about Doppler radar, in particular, its ability to prevent or curtail wind shear by avoiding that. It's been implicated in at least several major airline crashes, and I was wondering whether it would be cost-effective to require them, to mandatorily install them all, something like that. I'll leave it at that. Okay.
Great question, Bill. Thanks for joining us. That's amazing, isn't it? That's a good one.
It is. Hi, Bill. This is Dave Willingham. We have actually there are in the airliners up to date. We have wind shear, and we have the ability to detect a wind shear condition, and it pops up on the radar. These things are actually built in. Now, a Doppler radar is usually associated with the ground-based radar. You see it like with the Channel 7 or Channel 11 news. You'll see it's the Doppler shift, and that'll give you the velocity of the molecules out there. But that gives you a hint as to what the particles in the rain are doing and the wind. But we actually do have wind shear alerts, and you'll get them. And we don't like wind shear in aircraft at all. It's to be avoided, and it has causes accidents in the past. It will cause accidents in the future, but we're doing a really good job of being able to identify it and avoid it. So almost every pilot you'll see about trying to avoid those things. We do have those on board the aircraft. They do work. I've gotten the warnings. I've avoided it, and it has saved lives. So that was a very excellent question.
Bill in Manhattan, thank you. I appreciate you. We're going to move forward. We got a full board of callers here. Let's say good morning to Joaquin in Pennsylvania. You're on with our special guest, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dave Willingham. How are you this morning?
Yes, good morning. Oh, I'm doing so-so, but I actually had two questions. One is an observation. It seems that in the past that a lot of our rock stars and musicians had died in plane crashes, and it almost seemed to be relevant to the amount of times that they actually, flew. That was the first observation. And actually, too, I guess when it comes to fear of flying, it's a matter of the thought of being up in the sky and you only got one place to go, and that's down in an uncontrolled fall. But my actual question...
Okay, go ahead.
I think it was regarding I think it's the Boeing MAX 737. When they designed that airplane, from what I understand, they put a motor on that was way too big, and basically in order to fly that plane, it really has no aerodynamics, that it has to be trimmed by computer.
Well, go ahead. What's your question on that one, Hakeem?
Well, no, I mean, in other words, most of the commercial aircraft, at least prior to that one, they basically had a glide ratio to them. But it seems that the 737 MAX wouldn't have a glide ratio because in order to trim the plane, it's done by computer.
The glide ratio is not dependent upon the power plant. It's dependent on the wing form. So it does have a good glide ratio, and you'd really be surprised at 747s, DC-10s, 767s. They all will glide pretty well. They're pretty clean, very clean, efficient wings. However, we try not to glide in powered aircraft. The motor. Mm-hmm. The motors that they put on the aircraft, I have not heard any type of statistics on that. I can't speak authoritatively since I didn't fly the MAX. So I think that the wing form didn't change. The motors, they just make the airplane, go up, go fast, and they slow the baby down. So,
thanks, Dave. I appreciate the answer.
Yeah.
I want to mention this, Joaquin. We got to move forward. I'm sorry to cut you short, but I did have on here for everybody else to go back through our archives. We had none other than Artemis Pyle, the drummer from Lynyrd Skynyrd. And boy, does that a story, Dave, of course, as our guest. And Joaquin, that's amazing story about he helped save so many of the people on a piston-driven airplane that they never should have taken off in, but that's a whole nother story. Joaquin in Pennsylvania, always a privilege and honor to have you here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Let's go to Mark in upstate New York. We'll try to get as many callers as we can before the candle burns out. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning. Very great show every weekend.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question. This Thomas Fitzpatrick landed two planes in the 1950s, 56 and 58, on a New York City street. It's an amazing. It was amazing, and it's not all great story. He was drunk, but my question is, to the Colonel, how much navigational equipment do you think he was reliant upon, or was that just such a amazing? I mean, it was an illicit flight, but it was amazing. I guess 100,000 to 1, they said the first time, so to do it twice, I don't even know what the odds would be.
I'm not even sure, Mark. Do you know, Dave, about anything about that? I mean, but if you're drunk, I guess it's luck then, right?
I think that there's not a bunch of navigation units that actually are made to navigate your way to land on a major road versus an aerodrome. So I imagine he's using a lot of visual flight rules on that one, and he's probably flying by the seat of his pants. And maybe he was drunk and that helped him out. I'm not sure.
Mark, I love the fact that you brought in drunk. Yeah, drunk is not a way to fly, but that was luck, don't you think, Mark, in upstate New York? That's pretty bizarre.
That was the condition of the whole event. That's all I was saying. It was.
No, I hear you. Yeah.
Landing a plane in New York City street.
That's amazing.
But thank you very much.
Our pleasure, Mark. Always appreciate you. And thanks for being part of the Dr. Sky Experience. We've got about 5 minutes, Dave, and I don't know. This is interesting. I want to do this again with you if you'll be so kind to agree to us and you carry this on. Sadly, and I wanted to say, I know this time doesn't permit here, but your analysis of Air India Flight 171, this happened just June 12th, as you all know, the first time a Boeing 787-8, the Dreamliner as it's known, has this horrific situation where everybody except for one person gets out alive. For that particular situation, there's a lot of controversy about if they shut off the power to the engines. If they did, how did it happen? What do you know? And apparently, seat 11A seemed to be the life-saving seat for this individual. He got out with a few bruises, but everybody else perished. What do you think about that? I mean, I know it's not enough time to do justice, but your analysis from what you think we know in the world today and what you might know.
Sure. Doctor, I think you answered a couple of questions right there, but I'll try to answer those.
No, I know. It's a lot of stuff.
For 787s, they don't just have dual engine failures like that at low altitude. So there's a precipitate on that, and it's pointing towards the human factors. We talked about it, why airplanes crash. Sometimes, I'm not saying this event, sometimes it's intentional. And human beings are flawed. We do an outstanding job about picking the right people to go fly, vetting them, training them, evaluating them on a regular basis. Sometimes humans break, and this has happened several times for whatever reason, whether they be the person has a criminal reason to do it, i.e. 9/11. We've had at FedEx, we had Auburn Calloway, who took a life insurance policy out himself and tried to take over DC-10, crashed into the hub, killing him, doing suicide basically for insurance. So sometimes crashes are intentional. In this case, the indicators are pointing towards that there was some intentional a reason to shut those engines down. We don't know. I don't know. I won't speculate on that because the investigation is still going on. And then as far as actually surviving, what is the lucky seat? It's you go down to the store and buy a lottery ticket.
Right.
Sometimes your number pays off.
It's amazing.
And there's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes some people will be sitting right next to them. They die and that person lives.
Right. But still, the safest form of transportation. I hate to cut you short, and of course the apology is sincere. And to anybody else that was trying to get in, we'll continue this dialogue. Thank you, Sir Ding. Thank you, Dave, as we call you a friend. We'll look forward to having you on the program in the future, if you so desire, to talk about the wonders of aviation and how it's still the safest mode of transportation. Thank you, and hope you have a great weekend. But ladies and gentlemen, to everybody else, I just want to remind everybody on the Dr. Sky Experience, tomorrow, that is the last Saturday of every month, I do a special dinner cruise here in Arizona called the Dolly Steamboat. So if you're ever out in Arizona, look up dollysteamboat.com. And what does that mean? We'll be here a rebroadcast the last Saturday of every month as we continue to talk about the subject of climate change with Tom Harris of the International Climate Coalition. A very well-received program, and we hope that, of course, you will listen to that. And your suggestions at Dr. Sky, DRSKY, at WABCRadio.com. Lots of exciting guests coming up in the month of September. And we wish each and every one of you the best for health and happiness. And now we pass the torch on to TJ McCormick on the other side of midnight. Another great radio show here on your station. Talk Radio 77, WABC. And thanks to Tony and Bill for being the helmsman and navigating this show as you would expect, ladies and gentlemen, through time and space. Clear skies and health to all. We'll see you in another week.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?